My next guest is a doctor currently in private practice in Phoenix, Arizona, specializes in internal medicine and nuclear cardiology. He also is founder and president of American Islamic Forum for Democracy. And the president gave a speech the other day and said this.
Now let's make two things clear. ISIL is not Islamic. No religion condones the killing of innocents. And the vast majority of ISIL's victims have been Muslim. And ISIL is certainly not a state.
Please welcome to the show Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. Dr. Jasser, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great to be on with you. I'm a longtime fan.
Well, thank you. Doctor, when you heard President Obama in his speech where he was outlining his strategy to deal with ISIS and said that ISIS is not Islamic, what was your reaction to that?
You know, it sort of marginalizes all the work we've been doing in reform. It's a way to marginalize Muslims. I can tell you he's functioning as sort of the ex-communicator-in-chief, or, in fact, the enabler-in-chief. If you want to enable, I mean, ISIS calls itself the Islamic State, but for Muslims to deal with where this comes from, it doesn't come out of thin air. It comes from the concept of the Islamic State, where they want to establish religion, create theocracies, as we see in Iran or Saudi Arabia. The Wahhabist doctrine from Saudi Arabia is the infrastructure of the ideas of the Islamic State in its most medieval form, as we see it in ISIS. But the Organization of Islamic Cooperation is 56 countries, which are all in forms of the Islamic States. And I think if you want to defeat these ideas, you have to engage Muslims who are against the concept of the Islamic State. So it's almost like treating alcoholism. You know, if the alcoholics are handing around the bottle and they don't recognize that to treat drunk driving, you have to treat the alcoholism. The president is enabling continued, ignoring reform necessary to counter Islamist ideas.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is my guest. He's founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Doctor, I've interviewed a number of people that purport to be experts in Islam, and they tell me this. In the Quran and the other supportive documents is a call to Muslims that you must convert all Muslims, all non-Muslims to Islam, or they must pay a tax as a second-class citizen, or they must be put to death. And now these are concepts that's in the religion, and until and unless the Islamic religion has a reform the way Christianity did, we're going to have these problems.
Well, in my book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, I talk about how modern Muslims can do that through an enlightenment, through a reform process. And certainly, you know, my Islam is not that way, my family's and many of the Muslims I know, but we cannot ignore the fact that there is a Islam that's dominating many Muslim, if not most Muslim majority countries, that comes out of Saudi Arabia, and Islamist institutions like Al-Azhar is training most of the imams. And we have to recognize, now, how do you reconcile those passages? I'll tell you, you know, those passages are, I believe, relegated to 620 AD, and we can say that they belong and are referencing a battle that occurred at that time in what was Arabia. It doesn't profile all interactions with Christians and Jews. The same religion that allows us to intermarry, that allows us to have our children raised by Christians and Jews, cannot also say force them to pay a tax or force them to convert. So ultimately, this is related to battles. But again, this is not. I'll definitely agree with you that this is a grassroots interpretation and not that of our leadership. And Americans, the president, beginning with him, are giving us a pass and deferring the requirement to reform, the demand to reform, by saying that it's not Islam. And that's just not only obfuscation, but it's 13 years after 9/11, preventing the treatment of a pre-modern theocratic predominance of an ideology that's dominating our faith community.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is my guest, founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Dr. Jasser, is Islam compatible with a Western modern civilization?
I will tell you that those of us that escape those theocracies believe it is, but Islamism, political Islam, which mixes mosque and state, which believes that Sharia, that rights come through Islam and not directly from God to the individual, as America's founding documents and Jeffersonian principles taught all of us in reform against the Church of England and theocracy, that Islamism is not compatible until America can realize, and the West, and Muslims especially, who are definitely need to lead this reform, until we can realize that as long as Islamism exists, that's not compatible, and that's the new Cold War of the 21st century, whether it's the Brotherhood, Hamas, Jamaat Islamiyah, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, or even so-called moderate Islamists, which are a bigger problem because they may eschew violence, but they believe in the Islamic State. So Islamism is not compatible, but Muslims that separate mosque and state, that believe in liberty, is compatible.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is my guest, founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. So, Doctor, bottom line, how do we defeat Islamism?
We defeat it by creating a national strategy that engages media, government, religious leadership, academics, think tanks, and begins, just like in the Cold War, we determined that not only Soviet communism, but the ideology of communism was the threat. We didn't outlaw the Communist Party, but we said that liberty was the way to defeat that through free markets, and we beat the Soviets without ever firing a bullet directly against them. We defeat Islamism by engaging Muslim reformers and exposing groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations, Muslim Public Affairs Council in LA and elsewhere, that these are apologetic groups that are trying to prevent and obstruct free speech of reform against Islamism, and basically allow Muslims to have this debate within the House of Islam. And the West should take sides within the House of Islam with those that want free speech, that condemn apostasy laws, condemn Sharia in government, and all these other litmus tests of the separation between liberty and Islamism, and begin to have this so important debate and not dismiss groups like ISIS as simply aberrations, because right now we have no strategy. It's a whack-a-mole program, and until we have a strategy how to defeat the ideas, the military component is going to go on for hundreds of years.
His website is aifdemocracy.org. My guest's name is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, president and founder of American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Doctor, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.